A very good morning or afternoon, as the case may be, depending on the country you're based in, and welcome to this Fintelekt and Asian Bankers Association webinar on managing AML risk, operations, and continuity during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Shirish Pathak. I work at Fintelekt, and I will be your host today for this webinar. At the outset, let me thank the Asian Bankers Association for partnering again with us for this webinar. In light of the global situation, we have decided to increase our webinar schedule from once a quarter to once a month, and I hope this will add value to ABA members across Asia. Today we have two guest speakers, Guy Sheppard and Suveer Khanna. Guy is the head of Asia Pacific Financial Crime, Intelligence and Cyber at SWIFT, and Suveer is partner at KPMG India's forensic practice. Both of them are available on LinkedIn, and I would urge you to connect with them after the call should you wish to get some more advice from them. The topic for today's webinar is a bit ambitious, since this is the first time in recent years that the world is going through a situation like this. And really, all of us are still learning and trying to grapple with the true impact of this pandemic on our businesses, customers, partners, working situation, and our personal lives. Having said that, it is far better to try and grapple with the situation in a forward-looking manner rather than being fatalistic. And it is with this view that we decided to host this webinar. So while we may not have all the answers, I believe it is important to share information within the Fintelekt and ABA community and beyond, and keep the conversation going in the hope that we will all stay motivated through this crisis and come out of it with as few scars as possible. In this webinar today, I will ask our guest speakers to share their thoughts on what are the practical difficulties that banks have been facing, and are they seeing any common solutions that may be emerging or have emerged, especially from countries that have undergone the entire cycle of the pandemic. In the last few weeks, banks have presumably built up a backlog of transaction monitoring cases due to lower availability of staff and access to the required technology from home working situations. It is also likely that a large number of new accounts opened may have been done virtually without field verification visits and the required level of due diligence that is done normally. So we will discuss the likelihood of banks being faced with increased regulatory risk due to challenges in customer due diligence, transaction monitoring, and meeting reporting timelines, as well as the approach that we expect from regulators. Over shift due to tough economic conditions and cover some of the macroeconomic implications of the pandemic on AML CFT compliance. We will attempt to take questions from the audience at the end of the webinar. However, online platforms, including this one, are facing severe stress of overload at this point of time. And just in case it doesn't work out logistically, please email your questions to contact@fintelekt.com, and we will try our best to get our guest speakers to answer questions offline for you via email later. Suveer and Guy, thanks so much for joining us at this webinar. It is indeed a pleasure to have you here. Let me start off this conversation by asking Guy Sheppard the first question. All right, Guy, let me ask you, what do you think are the practical difficulties that your banking customers have been facing over the past few days? And in your conversations with them, are you seeing any sort of common solutions that may be emerging or have already emerged, especially from countries such as Singapore, where containment has been successful?
Sure, Shirish. So I think the situation obviously differs dramatically on a country by country basis. And I think if we look at this at a more kind of macro level, it's very clear that kind of early adoption of tighter border controls and social containment has obviously spread the growth of the curve. You mentioned Singapore in your question, and I think that's really been shown to be an example of where coordinated, centralized social distancing, restrictions on borders has really helped. But I think to the kind of practical difficulties, these are things that everyone will be facing. That Pretty much every financial institution I've spoken to has got a BCP, or business continuity planning, in place. So teams are being split sort of 50-50 to either work from home, and then a lot of them are doing 2 weeks working from home, and then they would rotate with the other half of the team that were working in the office. So I think that's one very kind of practical solution. Other companies have adopted in their entire workforce to work from home, aside from critical staff, be they IT support or some of the operations guys. I think the challenge is, I don't think we actually really know the true extent of the challenges yet. The obvious ones are the economic slowdown. Particular industry verticals, travel, tourism, leisure, have been hit, I think, most dramatically. But many of the clients that I'm talking to are having to reforecast almost on a bi-weekly basis as to how many negative percentage points they're looking at from an overall revenue perspective, be it in payments, be it in trade. We're not going to realize the true economic impact actually for quite some time.